Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from St. Augustine, Doctor of the Church, while we read his book, Confessions. Hello, Catholic pilgrims. We have such a good reading today. It's longer and meatier, but so very relatable. I don't want to waste time on this side, so let's get started by turning to 62 to read from Book 3, Chapter 7. There is another reality besides this, though I knew nothing of it. My own specious reasoning induced me to give in to the sly arguments of fools who asked me what was the origin of evil, whether God was confined to the limits of a bodily shape, whether he had hair and nails, and whether men could be called just if they had more than one wife at the same time, or killed other men, or sacrificed living animals. My ignorance was so great that these questions troubled me, and while I thought I was approaching the truth, I was only departing the further from it. I did not know that evil is nothing but the removal of good until finally no good remains. How could I see this when, with the sight of my eyes, I saw no more than material things, and with the sight of my mind, no more than their images? I did not know that God is a spirit, a being without bulk and without limbs, defined in length and breadth. For bulk is less in the part than in the whole, and if it is infinite, it is less in any part of it which can be defined within fixed limits than it is in its infinity. It cannot, therefore, be everywhere entirely whole, as a spirit is, and as God is. Nor had I the least notion what it is in us that gives us our being, or what the scriptures mean when they say that we are made in God's image. I knew nothing of the true underlying justice which judges, not according to convention, but according to the truly equitable law of Almighty God. This is the law by which each age and place forms rules of conduct best suited to itself, although the law itself is always and everywhere the same, and does not differ from place to place or from age to age. I did not see that by the sanction of this law, Abraham and Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David, and the others whom God praised were just men, although they have been reckoned sinners by men who are not qualified to judge. For they try them by human standards and assess all the rights and wrongs of the human race by the measure of their own customs. Anyone who does this behaves like a man who knows nothing about armor and cannot tell which piece is meant for which part of the body, so that he tries to cover his head with a shin piece and fix a helmet on his foot, and then complains because they will not fit. Or like a shopkeeper who is allowed to sell his wares in the morning, but grumbles because the afternoon is a public holiday and he is not allowed to trade. Or like a man who sees one of the servants in a house handling things which the cellar man is not allowed to touch, or finds something being done in the stable yard which is not allowed in the dining room, and is then indignant because the members of the household, living together in one house, are not all given the same privileges in all parts of the house. The people of whom I am speaking have the same sort of grievance when they hear that things which good men could do without sin in days gone by are not permitted in ours, and that God gave them one commandment and has given us another. He has done this because the times have demanded it, although men were subject to the same justice in those days as we are in these. Yet those who complain about this understand that when we are dealing with a single man, a single day, or a single house, each part of the whole has a different function suited to it. What may be done at one time of day is not allowed at the next, and what may be done or must be done in one room is forbidden and punished in another. This does not mean that justice is erratic or variable, but that the times over which it presides are not always the same, for it is the nature of time to change. Man's life on earth is short, and he cannot, by his own perception, see the connection between the conditions of earlier times and of other nations, which he has not experienced himself, and those of his own times, which are familiar to him. But when only one individual, one day, or one house is concerned, he can easily see what is suitable for each part of the whole and for each member of the household, and what must be done at which times and places. These things he accepts, but with the habits of other ages, he finds fault. I knew nothing of this at that time. I was quite unconscious of it, quite blind to it, although it stared me in the face. When I composed verses, I could not fit any foot in any position that I pleased. Each meter was differently scanned, and I could not put the same foot in every position in the same line. And yet the art of poetry by which I composed does not vary from one line to another. It is the same for all alike. But I did not discern that justice, which those good and holy men obeyed in a far more perfect and sublime way than poetry, contains in itself at one and the same time all the principles which it prescribes without discrepancy. Although, as times change, it prescribes and apportions them, not all at once, but according to the needs of the times. Blind to this, I found fault with the holy patriarchs, not only because in their own day they acted as God commanded and inspired them, but also because they predicted the future as he revealed it to them. Why did God make evil? What kind of God would allow evil in the world? Oh, okay, so where is your sky God? Show him to me. Just find him up in the clouds. You want to tell me why you think homosexual marriage is wrong, and yet you still eat pork, and the Bible says that you can't eat pork? Oh boy, you want to say traditional marriage is the only way, but even Abraham kind of had more than one wife. If abortion is so wrong, why does your God command killing in the Bible? Do any of these sound familiar? Yeah, I bet they do. I hear them all the time. And there was a time when, like St. Augustine, I was ignorant. What is amazing is that even back in his time, St. Augustine was getting these kinds of questions. These are the kinds of questions that Christians can get that can lead to doubting the faith. And Bishop Barron talks all the time about how irritated he is with the dumbing down of the faith that has gone on over the last 60 plus years. He always says we are a smart religion, and that is true. But when we don't teach our kids beyond Sunday school level education, these kinds of questions that get posed to St. Augustine are going to make people doubt the faith because they are ignorant. So evil is the hardest one to talk about, and it is the strongest argument atheists have against the existence of God. But even if you take away God, well, the atheist still has evil, and they have to deal with that. Evil is not a thing God created. Like St. Augustine points out here, quote, evil is nothing but the removal of good until finally no good remains, unquote. It's the same thing with cold and darkness. Cold is the absence of heat. Darkness is the absence of light. Evil is the absence of goodness. God created the world good, but he had to give us free will. Otherwise, we'd be programmed robots incapable of love. He had to give us the free will to choose the good, but that in turn means that we can choose to do things that are absent of good. And God allows for this because, again, we'd be drones if he didn't. You cannot know what heat is unless you are allowed to feel cold. You cannot know what light is unless you are allowed to experience darkness. You cannot know what love is unless you have felt hate. You cannot know what goodness is unless you have experienced evil. At least, we humans can't. The book The Giver explains this very well. Now, this isn't an exhaustive explanation about evil, and a lot of people won't be satisfied with it, and that's okay, but there are answers that can be fleshed out even more. Moving on to the sky god argument. The whole show me God and then I'll believe in him, argument is used by people who only live in the material world. They accept nothing that isn't material, except thoughts, love, dreams, etc. Those they most likely believe in, even though they are immaterial. But continuing on. So these people were asking St. Augustine, hey, what about God's hair and nails? Now, it is true that the incarnate Son of God, Jesus, has hair, nails, and a bodily shape. He didn't always have that, but he does now. When he was here on earth, you could literally go and find him. Not in the clouds, but walking around. That's not possible anymore, given that he ascended. So we can't go find him sitting somewhere or walking around. God is existence itself. So other than when he was here as the second person of the Blessed Trinity and in the Eucharist, he does not reside within his creation. He's not just one more created thing among many, where we can go up on the mountain and find him holding court or something. We do find him in the Eucharist, and that's where heaven meets earth, but I wouldn't go straight there with a non-Christian or even a non-Catholic. Lastly, let's quickly touch on the part where St. Augustine was asked whether, quote, men could be called just if they had more than one wife at the same time or killed another man or sacrificed living animals, unquote. All men and women up and down the ages are sinners, except Mary, of course, but all men and women are, and we can still be just even if we aren't perfect. Did people in the Old Testament sometimes have more than one wife or take another woman and have a kid with her, like Abraham? Yes. This was a common practice of the time, but that doesn't mean it's what God desired. Abraham's relationship with Hagar does not bring about good things down the line. In fact, we are still feeling the effects of that relationship to this day with the battle between Muslims and Jews. It's not what God told him to do. However, God can still make good from bad. We also have to remember that with the Jewish people, they had ceremonial laws, civil laws, and moral laws. The ceremonial and civil laws were just for the Jewish people in order to set them apart from other nations. Moral laws never change, and they are for all people through all time. So, since Christians have a new covenant and Christianity is for all people, we don't need to follow the ceremonial and civil laws of the Jews anymore. We can eat pork. We don't have to do ceremonial hand washings. Those things aren't the same as don't murder innocent people or marriages for only one man and one woman. Those are moral issues, and they stand for all time, for all people, and for all places. So we see here that today's skeptics aren't coming up with anything new. These are old, worn-out arguments that have answers to them. I didn't even get that deep into them. I just skimmed the surface. So what this means is we must never stop educating ourselves, and we must teach our kids more and more as they grow older and older. We have to prepare them for the world, and trust me when I say it's a jungle out there. That is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I will see you soon, and until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.